Greetings, fellow ghouls, and thanks for stopping by on this snowy evening. You might have noticed that there's a terrible winter storm passing through. I'd say there's already about a foot or two of snow on the ground, with another few more expected before the night is over. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you're stuck here for the time being. Come now, don't look too scared. There's worse places to be stuck in a snowstorm. Say, since you're stuck here for the time being, would you like to hear another true scary story from my collection? Yes, come. I've just put another log on the fire. There's a batch of hot chocolate ready for you. I think I have some eggnog and... There should be a plate of Christmas cookies floating around here somewhere. Maybe I can even find a scary story that's seasonally appropriate. Yes. There must be something in here. Of course. The Tale of the Living Doll. In 2014, during my first Christmas season at college, my RA decided to arrange a secret Santa gift exchange. My RA's name was Katie, and she was a real Type A personality who loved planning parties and scheduling events. Katie, myself, and maybe 12 other girls all lived together in the same building, which was actually an old house on a hill near campus that had been converted into a dorm. It was a yellow, Tudor-style home, which had probably been pretty cute at some point, but lately it had seen better days. The paint outside was decaying and had worn from a vibrant yellow to a sickly greenish hue. Inside, I lived with a girl named Christina on the top floor, the two of us sharing the only room in the attic. It had old hardwood floors and a beautiful bay window that looked out onto a small park next door. Christina was a pretty good roommate as far as roommates go, and kept her side of the room nice and clean. Over on my side of the room was a unique feature, a square wood door that led into a small crawl space that ran parallel to my bed. I didn't have much use for the extra space, and it sort of gave me the creeps, so I just threw some of my boxes in it and mostly left it closed. Anyway, on the first day of December that year, Katie knocked on Christina and my door in the afternoon while we were studying, and said she was planning a secret Santa gift exchange for the entire house. Now, when I say that Katie was Type A, I do mean it mostly as a compliment. She could be a lot sometimes, but she meant well, and honestly it was kind of nice to have someone who willingly and competently took care of all the events and planning. I myself actually liked the Christmas season quite a bit, so I jumped at the chance to participate. Christina and I both signed up. In the coming days, Katie adorned our old house with paper snowflakes, nutcrackers, and other winter decorations. Then, one night, she sent out emails to all the participants of the Secret Santa. I had gotten a girl named Leah, who lived on the first floor. I didn't know her too well, but she seemed pretty stylish, so I ended up buying her a nice pair of earrings that reminded me of her, and a little jewelry box to keep them in. I wrapped them up in some basic paper from the drugstore and brought them to the gift exchange when the night eventually came. All of us girls gathered in the basement of our house, where there was a lounge area with a few couches by the washer and dryer. One by one, we traded presents and enjoyed some holiday snacks provided by Katie. The event was going well, and everyone was having a good time. Leah seemed to sincerely enjoy the earrings. Then, towards the end of the night, I received my gift. Katie handed me a large box, almost 2 feet long and 1 foot wide. I was taken aback by the size, as most of us had just gotten each other cute little presents. I shook it gently, but couldn't glean any useful information. "What the heck is this?" I asked. "Who was my Secret Santa?" That's not how it works," Katie insisted playfully. "Open it first." I undid the smooth green ribbon wrapped around the large box and tore through the red patterned paper, genuinely curious. Inside was an old plain box with a lid, like a shoebox or a hat box. Everyone gathered around as I lifted the lid off slowly and gasped. Inside the box was a tattered, antique doll with dirty blonde hair and a dusty, turn-of-the-century style dress. Its icy blue eyes opened slowly as I tilted its head towards me. I screamed and threw the box back onto the table as everyone laughed. Let me back up here for a moment. There was a bit of an inside joke in our house that I was particularly afraid of creepy dolls. Closer to the beginning of that year, as a special Halloween event for the dorm, Katie had arranged for us all to go see the new Annabelle movie, which at the time was new in theaters. I'd always had a minor phobia of old dolls, with their lifeless porcelain smiles and dead eyes. I hadn't particularly wanted to go see Annabelle, but I had wanted to enjoy the company of my new dorm mates. As it turned out, seeing my fear projected on a giant screen didn't exactly do wonders for my phobia, and I may or may not have left the theater before the movie was over. We all had a laugh, and months later, they were still giving me crap about it. Not my finest moment, but having an inside joke did make me feel closer to my new friends. So, when I saw this terrifying old doll staring up at me from its bed of red tissue paper, I screamed first, then tried to laugh along with everyone else. "Oh my God, guys, that's so mean!" Christina rushed to my defense. Emily, a girl who lived down on the second floor, took credit for the gift. "I'm sorry," she giggled. "I saw it at the antique shop in town and I could not resist." "No, of course," I said. "It's very funny, Emily. Thanks." "You should keep it," Katie offered. "Maybe it could be like a form of immersion therapy. Then, when Annabelle 2 comes out, you'll be prepared." I stared down at the doll, lying stiff as a corpse in her cardboard casket, and could swear she was still making eye contact with me. Anyway, we cleaned up our shreds of wrapping paper and half-eaten cookies from the basement and headed back to our respective rooms. As Christina and I climbed the stairs to the attic, we stopped by a window in the stairwell. It looked out onto the streetlight outside. A heavy snow had begun to fall, and the substantial flakes sparkled in the amber glow. "Are you okay?" Christina asked me. That was a crappy thing of Emily to do. No, I'm fine, really. It's not a big deal," I said, meaning it. I felt a cozy sort of calm come over me. Even though the doll had spooked me a bit, it felt good to have a new group of friends in an unfamiliar place. I was less traumatized by the doll and more happy just to be joking around with everyone. Life carried on. As I neared the end of first semester and the beginning of Christmas break, I found myself abnormally busy with my college schedule. For about a week or so after the Secret Santa event, I completely forgot about the doll. I had thrown it on a chair in the corner of mine and Christina's room, not sure exactly what to do with it at the time, and become too busy to think of a solution. Christina and I would occasionally laugh at it, making fun of its creepy blank stare. We had started to call her Linda, named after Linda Blair from The Exorcist. Again, for about a week or so, she was little more than an amusing, if slightly unsettling, ornament in the corner. One night, in mid-December, just about at the end of the semester, I stayed up way too late studying for a final. It was my English final, and I was particularly nervous about it. I sat at my desk for hours going over my notes by the dim glow of my little lamp. Around 2 a.m. or so, I started to get so tired that I thought it best to turn in. Christina, stressed with her own exams, had already fallen asleep on her bed across the room with her book open on her chest and papers strewn across her lap. I was still nervous and wanted to keep studying, but I also didn't want to fall asleep during the exam tomorrow. And so I changed into my PJs and slipped under the covers. I turned away from Christina and looked over to the big bay windows and watched a light snow fall in the streetlight as I drifted off to sleep. I remember waking suddenly to the sound of footsteps creaking on our wooden floor. Christina had probably woken up and realized she'd fallen asleep without getting ready for bed. Like I said, she was usually pretty neat. I figured she would probably want to clean up her papers and properly get ready, brush her teeth, wash her face, and all of that. I listened as her footsteps paced back and forth. I opened my eyes and looked out onto the snowy streetlight. It was still dark outside. It looked like I still had a few hours left to sleep. I listened as Christina continued to pace, her light footsteps only delicately dislodging the floorboards, like she was trying to stay quiet and let me sleep. "It's okay, Christina, I'm awake," I whispered in the dark and rolled over. Christina was still in bed. In fact, she was in the exact same position she'd been in before, lying flat with a book on her chest and papers all over her lap. So, where had the creaks been coming from? I realized it had been strange to hear creaks in our attic bedroom, since we were the only ones on the floor and it wasn't like there was anyone above us. They had been quite rhythmic too, and really sounded like small footsteps. I looked over to our door, which was still locked. Maybe I'd just been hearing things. My eyes drifted around the room as I tried to fall back asleep. Some of the orange streetlight was spilling in from the bay window, and I caught a glimpse of Linda, the doll, half covered by some old laundry, sitting on the chair in the corner. Once again, I could swear she was making eye contact with me. I struggled to fall back asleep, and during my exam the next day, struggled to focus. I was sure that I'd heard those footsteps, and they had sounded like they were coming from inside our room. Maybe Christina had jumped out of bed, been looking for something, and then jumped back in. But then, why would she have placed her book and papers back on her lap? I couldn't stop thinking about Linda and her frozen white face, staring back at me from the chair in the corner by the foot of my bed. I felt a chill run up my spine as I imagined her coming to life and tiptoeing across our room. Ugh. No, I did not get up late last night, Christina told me later that day, while straightening up her side of the room. I crashed while reading and didn't wake up until my exam. I think I did okay on it, though. Maybe pulled a solid B- or at least a C+. You sure you weren't walking around our room in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m. maybe? I asked again. Yes, I'm sure. Why do you ask? Christina wondered, hearing the concern in my voice. No reason, I replied. After all, it wasn't a big deal. No one had been in our room and the door had been locked. It must have just been some strange creaking in the attic that I hadn't heard before in my 4 months of living there. Right? I looked over at Linda, still smiling at me from over in the corner, and suddenly dreaded the thought of sleeping another night with her watching me. I had another exam the next day, and I needed all the rest I could get. I marched over to the chair and grabbed her, along with the laundry, and opened the small square door leading into the crawl space on my side of the room, the one that ran parallel to my bed. I undid the little latch that normally kept the door shut and stuffed Linda back into the crawl space, along with the laundry from the chair. I scooted back out and latched the door behind me. Oh, was Linda getting to you? She is kind of creepy, Christina asked. No way, I just want to tidy up a little. I lied, not quite ready to admit that she had scared me the night before. Another few days went by, and I forgot all about Linda. I finished up the rest of my exams and got ready to go back home for Christmas break. The very last night before I took the train home, I packed my bag and got into bed around midnight, falling asleep almost instantly. My first semester of college was over, and I could finally rest easy. Then, once again, I woke up sometime in the night. I looked out the window into the warm glow of the streetlight. All was calm. Not a single flurry of snow. It had snowed maybe a day or two before, though, so there was still a fresh layer of white covering everything outside. Everything seemed so still, so quiet. So why had I woken up? A loud bump made my stomach turn, and I almost cried out in fright. I looked over to the side of my bed. It was as though the loud knocking sound had come from within the wall. The crawl space. A feeling of dread crept over me. I felt my entire body grow tense, a tightness in my chest forming as my breathing quickened. Linda. She was in the crawl space. Thump. Another heavy sound from within the wall. This time I did cry out involuntarily. I looked over at Christina to see if I had awoken her, but also because I was so scared, but she wasn't there. Her bed was empty. That was right. I remembered. She had left for home earlier that day. She was already on her way home to a nice family Christmas celebration, and I was alone in the attic with that horrible, haunted doll. I sprang from my bed and ran to the door to our room, fully prepared to go out into the night in my pajamas, as long as it meant getting away from Linda. And yet, something made me pause before I flung open the door. If anyone found out that I fled my room in the night because of some doll, then I would really never hear the end of it. It might not even be a joke anymore. They might start to think I was weird. A crazy girl in the attic who thinks her stupid prank gift is actually some sort of ghostly vessel. Ugh! It would be social suicide. Everything had been going well this first semester, and I wanted to stay friends and be normal. My fears were stupid anyway. There was no such thing as ghosts or hauntings or haunted dolls or whatever combination of the two. I took a deep breath and turned to the small square door to the crawl space. I had stuffed a bunch of boxes and things in there over the months. I'm sure something had just shifted and made a loud noise. I bent down and undid the little latch from the door, allowing it to creak open slowly. I grabbed my phone off the desk and used the flash as a light, pointing it back into the crawl space and looking for any sign of Linda. Lit by the stark white flash, I could see that some items had probably just shifted. One of the boxes I placed there a while back seemed to be on its side, and a few of the contents had spilled out. I hadn't exactly been precious with how I'd arranged everything in there, so it was perfectly reasonable that something had fallen over. Hunched over on all fours, I scooted deeper into the small wooden chamber and brushed the contents of the toppled box back inside. I closed the box back up and righted it, only then noticing the pile of dirty laundry behind. It was the same pile I'd thrown in with Linda the day after she had scared me. Only there was no Linda. I searched frantically through the pile of messy clothing, but to no avail. No, she had to be in here somewhere, I thought. I put her in here, and it's not like she got up and walked out. I pushed aside the rest of the boxes within the crawl space, desperately looking for any sign of the demented doll. But she was gone. Eventually, I scooted backwards out of the crawl space and relatched the door shut. I had put her in there, right? I began to doubt myself as I got back into bed and tucked myself in under the covers. No, I was certain of it. I had stuffed her far in the back of the crawl space because I was sick of her looking at me from that chair in the corner. I glanced over. She was back in the chair, sitting like before and staring right at me with those lifeless eyes. I hadn't thought to look in the corner, but thanks to that orange glow from the streetlight, I saw her there now, like she had never moved from her spot. Terrified as I was, my first thought was Christina. She knew I was scared of Linda, and we lived in the same room. I texted her immediately, asking if she had taken Linda from the crawl space and put her back on the chair to mess with me. She was still awake, and texted me back right away. "No," she wrote. "What are you talking about?" "Joke's over, Christina. I'm serious," I replied. "I didn't touch her. Seriously." Christina maintained her innocence, and I believed her. She had been a good roommate and a good friend. She knew I was scared, and I don't think she would ever play a prank like that on me. I was left with the conclusion that The doll was haunted. I did end up leaving my room that night and sleeping on a couch in the basement. The next day I went home on the train for Christmas break, but not before putting Linda back in her box and dropping her off at the antique store downtown. I didn't even go inside, but just left her box on the sidewalk in front of the door to their shop. It was funny. Even though she was back inside her box, I felt like I could still feel Linda's eyes watching me as I walked away and left her there. Anyway, I did end up having an okay Christmas break, and the encounter with Linda just ended up being a good scary story. Christina insists to this day that she never touched the doll. Emily, the girl who gave her to me, continued to shop at that antique store in town. The first time she went back in after break, the owner, an older man, recognized her and asked what had happened with the doll. "I noticed you brought it back," he said. "Did she do something scary?" "Well, I gave it to my friend and she brought it back," Emily said. "It was sort of a joke gift and I don't think she liked it very much." Emily then told me that the owner told her that the doll had come from an estate sale at a big old house a ways outside of town. A crazy old woman had lived in that house and died in it recently. When the antique shop owner had the doll in his shop before Emily had purchased it, he said that one morning he came in to find the doll on a shelf in a different position than it had been in the night before. It had given him the creeps from the start, and after I returned it that day, he had simply thrown it in the trash. I have no explanation for the strange events surrounding the doll, but I know now that I should have trusted my gut instinct. Old dolls are scary, and there's no shame in getting rid of one, even when it's a Christmas gift. Ooh, I guess the weather outside isn't the only thing that's frightful. What a perfect tale to get you in the holiday spirit. I don't recommend messing around with any haunted objects, especially creepy dolls. If you need to get me something for Secret Santa, well, I'm fine with a card. Speaking of haunted objects, Aberfoyle Manor is absolutely teeming with them. It's not a safe place for you to spend the night. I know it's still snowing outside, but you really shouldn't stay here. Just stick to the path, and you'll be out of the woods in a few hours. Thanks for stopping by, fellow ghouls. I wish you a very happy and maybe even a little spooky holiday season. Good night.